Hey Brian, I see you in the chat. How we doing? I'll get started in a minute. Just giving a little time for the guys to hop in here. I just talked to Chris a second ago, and he said he's getting his stuff set up, so he should be in shortly. And then I know Emmanuel will be in shortly also. So what's going on tonight, Brian? Let me get myself centered. All right. Yeah, we'll get started. I'll give it about I'll start it with 3 minutes on my clock, so about another 45 seconds or so, and we will get started. So many different things to talk about on this topic, so many different ways we can go. I might even do another live stream on my other channel tomorrow, going in depth. So I don't know, stay tuned for that. I always say that I'm gonna I'm gonna do a live stream on Sunday, and then for some reason or another, something comes up and I don't do it. And I know on my What I've Been Thinking channel, I haven't done very many live streams, or it's been kind of sporadic when I've been doing them. But I I honestly am going to start doing more on there. It's just the way I've been working out my editing and stuff has been consuming a lot of time, so it's kind of slowed me up on putting out as many videos as I would like to. But yes, I will just start hopping on a live stream, maybe do like a car chat or something, on my ride home from work. That way I can at least, get my opinion and voice out there on some of those issues, so people won't just hear these silent voids from my other channel. But without further ado, I guess I will get started. Hello, this is the Political Matrix. I am your host, Young Morpheus. Tonight we are talking about, is this Palestine? Um, there are, and it's kind of one of those subjects where it's like, where exactly do we start? Do we start with this recent flare up? Go back deeper, and so those are one of the things which I've been kind of pondering on how to talk about this subject. I didn't want to rush right out like everybody else did, and cover minute to minute. I wanted to sit back and wait because I know these kind of situations constantly go on in that part of the world. But most of the time, we're so engaged with domestic politics or entertainment or whatever your interest may be, or activism, even, there are numerous causes out there for us to that somebody needs to be looking at if you're busy on other things. So I completely understand that. Hold on a second. And we got Chris in the house now.
What's
How
good,
we doing,
man?
brother?
You already know, man. Just chilling.
You look like you're getting a little extra wisdom down there.
I know. Don't tell nobody, kid.
No, that's a good thing. I noticed I'm starting to get a couple more here and there. Oh, I see Brian had another comment. Says, do you believe that Pakistan is part of it too? What do you mean by part of it? That could be so many different ways. Part of the conflict in general, of course, because but is it voluntary or is it involuntary how they're involved? So I mean, there's so many ways you can look at that question. I look at it in the lens of if you're in an altercation with somebody, whether you start the altercation or not, you're involved in that altercation. And there's different degrees of accountability for who are involved in that altercation. The person who starts the altercation is obviously more guilty of what transpires in the altercation. Hold on one second. There we go. There's Emmanuel.
E, what's up, man?
What's up,
Hey,
Chris?
hey, brother.
Not much.
And so, what I was saying on the accountability of those two involved, it depends on who started the situation and was there justification to even start the situation before you start pointing fingers at the other party who's involved. Have to always look at who starts things. And that goes into perfectly how the media has been, let's say, framing the narrative. They always frame the narrative from, Hamas shooting rockets into Israel, but they never want to talk about the settlements first. So hey, how we doing, Manuel?
I mean, what are you talking about? Are you talking about
Israel and
Israel and
Palestine.
Palestine, right? You mean Israel using Hamas with that Lee Atwater shit, right? That's what we're talking about, where they're trying to frame Hamas as like giving justification to kill Palestinians, right? Or
Well, I'm talking about just in general, and especially I don't know if any of you, I don't know if either of you two or anybody in the audience has been seeing BBC. BBC lately have been getting verbally smacked down right and left by the way they've been framing the narrative. And they
right,
always frame it, Israel's shooting all these, Palestine is shooting or Hamas is shooting all these rockets into Israel, but um, they never want to talk about the forced evacuations. They don't want to talk about the Israeli settlers just literally living in people's houses with them for like 10 years before booting them out. They don't want to talk about any of these things, how systematically they are stealing people's land. And they said, oh, well, we just want to let the courts handle everything. Well, if you write all the laws in your favor, of course you're going to want the courts to handle it because it's rigged in your favor already. And then you say, well, you don't want to accept a legal justification when the UN and most of the other countries around the world have been saying what they're doing is completely unfair. But the problem is they're backed by the United States and Britain. So everybody knows that if they say anything or do anything, the United States is going to enact some kind of penalty back on them. So everybody just shuts their mouth and complains and whines. It's almost like, uh, for example, the George Floyd situation. You're watching somebody get snuffed out right in front of you, and all you can do is yell, hey, stop doing that. You're killing him. That's all they can do. And that's what all the other countries are basically doing in the situation with Palestine right now.
You're right.
you are absolutely right.
I mean, if you look back to, say, 1946, what the land looked like at that time, how much of the land was Palestinians?
I saw the map. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I tweeted it out. I tweeted it out earlier on one of my
I
pages.
saw the
But you notice the map, and it's literally to the point now where it is almost complete Israeli control of all of Palestine.
Oh yeah.
And it's like they still keep trying to say, oh well, we're trying to defend ourselves. In no, even the agreements which they agree with on their own, they're even that. And just turning this blind eye to it. And if you notice what the media is doing now, there's been a couple of stories about how Instagram and I believe Twitter also has been blocking Palestinian journalists and information coming out from the Palestinian point of view, all the way up to networks like Al Jazeera and the Associated Press.
Mhm.
It's starting to get to, and what I've noticed is a lot of the people on the left were calling a lot of this stuff out. Some of the I guess right wingers who are more worried about all of these the foreign policy issues more, they've been noticing some of this stuff and kind of seem to be on the same accord, talking about some of these issues. But all of a sudden, a couple of other issues come up, and it's almost like, you know, the shiny object, and everybody looks away from this situation. And what's happened is there seems like, in my opinion, to be even more censorship that's happened even after that. They've just found new algorithms or different ways because I tell you, I searched this subject and these topics all day long. And I can't tell you how hard it is to find video on most of this stuff. It's all being suppressed. And I find it interesting. You can only hear about the damage which is going on in Hamas, but you can barely find out anything about what's going on inside of Israel. Then it's also been, I just read something in the Spanish Los Angeles Times, and that article said that not only have they been targeting specifically media buildings, but satellites, all kinds of things like that. So in my opinion, that sounds like somebody who's trying to intentionally, as a government, block out any kind of media access or anything that's going on to the outside world. And our mainstream legacy press is like not even talking about any of the stuff that's going on. Complete, just almost like blanket. I'm not hearing anything. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. You two could tell me.
From what I've seen, you're 100% correct. The Al Jazeera thing with the building is the only significant one I've heard of so far. But, you know, the IDF classifying it as a military installation and violating international law, I mean, it's like they got a comedy writer or something like that. I mean, I think they're just trying to be fucking funny at this point. I mean, that's got to be like the lowest, dumbest, stupidest way to phrase it that I've ever seen in my entire life. And then, you know, Biden comes in saying they have a right to defend themselves, and he showed his whole white stupid ass. And everybody's like, this isn't the time to tell you I told you so, right? But we all told you Biden wasn't shit, right? We all told you Biden was a warmongering piece of garbage, right? So
speaking of that, did you guys see the Ned Price video?
No.
I didn't.
Oh man, you guys need to see that one. I call it a perfect example of catching somebody in trying to be cute with their words and be very careful. And I'm not sure where, I think this might have been a reporter from Al Jazeera, maybe. And he's questioning him about, do you feel like the Palestinians have a right to self-defense? Actually, you know what? Hold on. I'm gonna hold that thought, put a button in that. Chris, can you find that video?
I'm already on. I'm already on it.
He's already looking. I saw it.
My man. I figure I'll answer this question that Brian had real quick. And so let's see. I want to ask, is Zionism bad? Zionism, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, I don't speak for my co-hosts here, but in my opinion, Zionism is the root of most of the evil in this whole entire world. What most people don't is. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I don't agree with that ideology at all, because whether you call it Zionism or white supremacy or whatever name you could come up with, usually that ideology means that exactly, Thomas. That ideology means that whatever we believe, we can do whatever we want to do, and you just have to deal with the consequences. And you know, that's a phrase I bring up often that Thomas brought up, is that the disingenuousness in covering this topic is crazy, because when you say, oh, I don't like Zionists, or I disagree with Zionism, oh, you're anti-Semitic, you're anti-Semitic. But as the quote there put up by Thomas shows you, Zionism is an ideology. It's not your religion or your beliefs. Well, it's your belief in your ideology, not your religious belief. Maybe even your political ideology, with that being said. So when you have somebody like Joe Biden, he said this some time ago. This isn't a recent quote. He said this some time ago. Here's a Roman Catholic dude from Pennsylvania or Delaware, wherever he's from, and he's like, yeah, I'm a Zionist. You don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. So again, it just
Irish, 100% Irish,
right?
Irish Catholic. You know what I'm saying? And he considers himself a Zionist. So I laugh whenever I see people, especially online, whenever you say, "Oh, Zionism sucks" or something to that effect, and their first response from some defender of the ideology is, "Oh, you're anti-Semitic." I just roll my eyes at them and laugh because there's a lot of Zionists here, most in the middle of America, and they're vote Republican. They just don't know it, but they are.
And with that anti-Semitic comment, and you guys are going to hear this over and over and over because I feel like I need to break this stupid statement of anti-Semitism. The reason why is because that alone, the way it's used, is white supremacist in itself. When you look at the descendants of Shem, now this is going off of the Bible. Now, if you want to go off of the Bible, because you're using the term based off of the Bible, keep that in mind. So you have to refer to the Bible on how it references and uses this term. Now, Shem is a descendant of Noah, one of his three sons. That means all of the people who descend from Shem would be Shemites or Semites. That is a lot of damn nations. That's at least like a third of the world's population. Now, the modern Jewry, their population comes to about, 14 million worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
So what that tells you is that's leaving out a lot of damn people who are Semites. And so what you're saying is the only time something could be anti-Semitism is when it's a white Jew.
A white European.
So a white Jew, white European. Yeah, a white European is the only person who gets to hold on to that term and gets to be called a victim under that. And what you don't realize is Ishmaelites, which a lot of those people in Palestine are, they're sons of Shem also. So that's Shemite versus Shemite right there. If you go out to a lot of East Indians and a lot of these other people, Elamites and all that, they all biblically descend from Shem also. So another thing about it is when it describes Shem, Shem is described as Afro-Asiatic. Now, you're saying that the people who appear European, to me at least, get to claim the term of Afro-Asiatic, and no other Afro-Asiatic people get to claim that term of anti-Semitism?
Yep.
The whole way that is used is racist. And it's racist for white privilege and for white people. So every time that term comes up, you guys are probably going to hear me go into this spill over and over. I'm going to do a video on it. I'm tired of people using this dumbass, stupid term.
You've done it before.
We know at this point, it's a tool. You know, it's nothing more than a tool. It's just used to shut down debate and to keep people from saying anything because nobody wants to be called a racist. No one wants to be called anti-Semitic, especially given how much. He probably just got logged off. But no one wants to be called those names, especially in the light of how much we discuss World War II and Nazism and the Holocaust and all that other stuff. So, the term is just basically used to stifle debate and to make sure you don't get out of pocket. So yeah, I don't necessarily. So I do think Zionism is bad as an ideology. I
mean, yeah, I agree. Zionism is just. You see a lot of it. If you look at the people who associate with it, who tout it, who sing its praises, I mean, they don't seem to follow along party lines or nationalities or anything like that. They just all seem to be a specific type of horrible person. And when you're talking about ideology that can do that.
Oh man, you see that?
What?
See what happens when things get a little too real?
So you did get logged off. We were talking about it like literally like 30 seconds ago.
And people wonder why.
The footage of this has been they show a few sparkles in the sky meant to represent the Palestinian rockets shooting into Jerusalem or other parts of Israel. And then the other part of the rest of the footage is, you know, the Israeli jets destroying Palestine buildings in the Gaza Strip. You know, you have to, as an American, you have to watch this and realize, like, damn, look at our money at work. You know, because a lot of that is funded by what we give them every year. So
What is it, 10 million a day or something like that?
it's a ridiculous number.
Yeah,
I
some
remember
ridiculous ass
they
amount.
got Obama to give them 38 billion.
Mm-hmm. We give them so much, and you see Congress prostrating. You see Congress just showing their whole ass about it, that it's wrong and shit like that. Which one of them is gonna say, "Oh, you shouldn't give them any more money"? I haven't heard a single Congress person say, "Don't give Israel any more money." Haven't heard any of them say it. So they're just
You know,
prostrating.
Bernie is the closest one. He was be like, well, you know, maybe we shouldn't give them so much money.
And
Like,
then
you
they
know, the
started spreading around that he's a self-hating Jew. What kind of shit is that? They started spreading around he's a self-hating Jew. The minute he said that, the minute he did.
Mm-hmm.
What the
Well, here's
anytime a Jewish person who goes against Israel, who speaks against Israel, they do get hit with self-hating Jew, just kind of like how certain black conservatives get hit with the Uncle Tom or Sambo card. You know, some of them do act like that, but for the most part, a lot of them don't.
exactly. It says, I'll read it. Some North Africans, some Ethiopians, Berbers, Egyptians, etc., Arabs, ancient Mesopotamians, Hebrews, Babylonians are Semitic people. The Ashkenazi Jews are Eastern Europeans by DNA. And there's two on my other channel. I got a couple of DNA videos coming out as far as Ashkenazi, so that's going to be pretty interesting. Also, and the thing about it is, here's the thing. If half of my community is saying one thing and the other half is saying something different, and one half has a lot of evidence that goes against the popular narrative, and they're showing evidence after evidence after evidence, and you're telling everybody who believes anything they say that they're racist, basically, against white people, because that's what I'm just going to call it, racist against white people. I mean, here's another thing, which frustrates me about the whole thing. You have millions of people who go through all kind of trauma and persecution daily. So nobody escapes some forms of persecution. But every time a certain group receives any kind of scrutiny or anything, then the whole world needs to shut their mouth and needs to be, worried more about what's happened to these people than everybody else. I mean, we have black and brown people who are shot down by police every 28 hours. That's a fact, every 28 hours. But yet there's no outcry for any of that, except for when we have to watch it on an 11-minute long video, watching somebody get stuffed out. It has to go to that level for the whole nation to actually give a damn. You have Palestinians, which if you watch the first couple of days of this conflict, mostly Palestinians were killed, mostly Palestinian kids. In fact, the death count even now, there's more Palestinian kids dead than there are Israelis as a whole, including soldiers. But everybody's focused on what Hamas is doing to Israel. It's kind of like,
Does it have to
be, I'm wondering, does it have to be like 10 Palestinians per Israeli to die before it's actually considered, oh man, we should care about the Palestinians? I'm wondering, what is the value difference on Palestinian life to Israeli life? Because I'm getting really confused.
There is no value. There's no value. It's zero. We know it's less than zero.
What's up, Kelly?
Kelly, what's up? Yeah, it's less than zero. You know what I'm saying? Like, just look what these Europeans are allowed to do. The settlers. That's even before we get to like the the military and what they do, right? Or even the security forces, just the regular people. I mean, if you look at it, it's kind of like 40s, 50s America, the way that it looks, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It just looks like a bunch of people running around beating up the minority group, you know, or the group that doesn't want to, the group that's trying not to fight back.
Or in that, or closer, go back, say maybe 30, 40 years before that, in the late 1890s, when they were actually starting to take the rest of the West Coast and those areas like that. Because the United States was doing the same thing. I referenced on Twitter, it's kind of like the Trail of Tears. A lot of people, when we look back at history, they think of the Trail of Tears like it just happened at one time period. It was a continuous event. What they don't realize is they were put on settlements. Different frictions would happen. They tell them, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Basically, clashes would come about. Then that would give the U.S. military cause to go in and kick them off their land, do whatever the hell they wanted to. Then there would be a small rebellion that would happen. And then they would push them, and this would be a reoccurring thing over and over and over till they push them all the way up into the Dakotas. Now, we're talking about a lot of these natives, what they don't think about, they started all the way as far away as Florida. How do you get from Florida all the way up to North Dakota? And some even to Canada, they pushed them that far. So, and now granted, along the way, some diverged off and found areas that were a little bit more desolated, where there wasn't as much population, and started anew there in different parts of, say, Oklahoma, and different parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. But that was what the Trail of Tears was really like. And that is no different than what has went on in Israel over the past, 70 years now?
Ever since Lord Balfour wrote that letter.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, think about the white privilege you have right there. I can't remember since even like the Kings, the last time a single person writes a letter to a nation for a whole nation, and it's given to them. One person. And that one person decides to found him a whole nation by kicking a whole bunch of people out of the area. In fact, here's something which a lot of people don't even realize. They initially weren't even going to be in the area they're in now, because they didn't even know where they were going. Most of this stuff comes from the Zionists. It doesn't come, I'm not trying to blame everybody who is of the Jewish faith, because a lot of these people have no control over what their leaders do. And that's something that we have to all start to think and disengage ourselves from being so sensitive and defensive all the time. Even our leaders in the Black community who sell us out and do all that other crap, that's not us doing that. In the Asian communities, the ones, China, what they're doing in Wuhan, that all the Chinese people don't agree with that stuff. And we have to look at it that way and disconnect what the governments are doing versus what the people individually are. So I want to put that disclaimer out there to people so they don't get all sensitive when we talk about these subjects.
So I'm gonna play the video now, Marcus. You want to like?
Remind me. Yeah, this video, I feel like was what I was talking about earlier is a perfect example of catching somebody right in the act of trying to be cute with their words and creative. This guy has been sent out here to tailor a message of propaganda. He gets caught in the act of trying to prop up Israel and justify Israel's actions, but deny Palestinian actions in a sneaky, slick way. But this reporter bust his ass right in the act. So it's an excellent clip. I hope I see more of reporters doing shit like this. But without further ado, let's cue it up.
We're speaking of the principle of self-defense. We certainly.
I'm asking if you think that the principle of self-defense applies to the airstrikes that they're conducting in response.
Matt, this is a very fluid situation. I would hesitate to comment on operations beyond, the rocket fire that is clearly targeting innocent civilians in Israel. So I would hesitate to speak to specific operations that have just occurred, but the broader principle of self-defense is something we stand by on behalf of Israel.
Yeah, but do you think that the Israeli military response to the rockets coming in, a military response to the rockets coming in is covered by this broader rubric of self-defense, right?
Self-defense often does authorize the use of force.
Thank you. I want to ask you about East Jerusalem, but to talk about what you said about the principle of self-defense. Does that in any way apply to the Palestinians? Do they have a right to self-defense? Do Palestinians have a right to self-defense?
Because they never say that.
In broadly speaking, Saeed, we believe in the concept of self-defense. We believe it applies to any state. I don't think that I certainly wouldn't want my words to be construed as.
I understand. I want to ask you, I don't want to harp on this either, but the Israelis killed 13 people just now, including maybe 5 or 6 children. Do you condemn that? Do you condemn the killing of children?
Saeed,
I'm asking, do you condemn the killing of Palestinian children?
Obviously, and these reports are just emerging, and I understand, I was just speaking to the team, I understand we don't have independent confirmation of facts on the ground yet, so I'm very hesitant to get into reports that are just emerging. Obviously, the deaths of civilians, be they Israeli or Palestinians, are something we would take very seriously.
Okay. You're going to know as soon as I read what your answer was that there's a big problem with it. You said, well, not a problem, it just doesn't answer the question. We believe that it, meaning the right to self-defense, applies to any state. Well, you see the problem. Right? Yes?
Do
you regard Palestine as a state?
I wasn't
referring. Do you think that, you don't in the context of the ICC and the UN? So are you saying that you do not, if it applies to any state, are you saying that Palestine?
Look at his face.
I was making a broader point, not attached to Israel or Palestinians in that case.
So, if they do have a right to self-defense.
Matt, I'm not in a position to debate the legalities from up here. But our message is one of de-escalation.
Disgusting.
Did Neo train him? Because that was dodging there. I mean, he just bent backwards and forward and side, all that shit.
Yo, again, that's very telling, right? In that you can't even say, if you're part of the United States government and you're giving a press conference, you cannot say that this group of people has the right to defend themselves. You can't even say that. Like, hey, the dude just got punched in his face. Can you punch him back? You hemming and hawing and hesitating and all this other stuff. Like, you can't say it. But and if you notice, whether it's from England, whether it's from Colombia, whether it's from the United States or Canada, every single time this issue comes up, the first thing that comes out their mouth is, well, Israel has a right to defend itself. Rockets are being shot into, and I don't watch like Entertainment Tonight or any of that stupid shows, right? But this week I was at dinner with a friend and it was on her television. So, we just had it on background noise. So they actually decided to cover what was going on a little bit. So they showed this, of course, it always has to be an 80-some-odd-year-old Holocaust survivor, survived the Holocaust and is in Israel and now is ducking from rocket fire from Hamas, right? So they show all the different bomb shelters. The Israelis are in there dancing, serving drinks, partying, singing, having a great old time, as supposedly rockets are raining down on you, and they downstairs in the basement getting it in. Where's that video for the neighbors? You gonna show us the bomb shelters for the Palestinians?
I gotta step in on this question here. Brian asked, did Israel ever exist? And then Kelly responded, not until the US and UK made it so. It depends on what do you mean by Israel. Do you mean the ancient Israel or do you mean the state of Israel? Because the state of Israel is different than the kingdom of Israel. Those are two different things entirely. Israel, the state of Israel, is based on Zionism. That's what that's based on. I mean, not until
That's right.
not until the Rothschilds and all of their buddies came up with the plan that they needed to forcefully take a homeland. Was that even a goal or that wasn't even what any Jewish people were trying to do. I'm talking about European Jewish people. That's not even what they were trying to do. Now, they believed in a Messiah would take them back, which that's what every Jewish and Hebrew person believes, yes. But it's not by having some powerful, wealthy nation do a lot of financial, business dealings with nations and countries to force somebody out of a land and do it that way. That's not the way that it says in the Bible, and that's not the way that the people believe. That is from atheists, for the most part, Jews, who, I'll say atheist Jewish, for the most part, who don't read any kind of anything and just use the supposed identity to claim land because of military and strategic positioning. I mean, you go back to, and it's Thomas brought up earlier, Joe Biden's statement about how he's a Zionist. It's showing that you don't have to be a believer in the faith of Judaism or anything like that to support this issue. In fact, this, I feel, is completely separate from the religion itself. This is strictly a political thing. And if you go back to, the statement that Joe Biden said, the other one, he said, if there was not an Israel, we would have to create one because we basically need a foothold in the Middle East. So that's the reason why the United States and Great Britain are behind it. They don't care if the claim is legitimate or not legitimate, or they don't care about any of that stuff. It's because, hey, they know these people are allies and it's going to help them exert more control over those melanated, nations in the Levant region. That's all it's about. It's about extending control over all of those countries there and being able to step in any moment when you feel they're getting out of line. Also, it helps keep a limit on their capabilities of catching up with the United States and actually striking back for some of the crap and atrocities and corruption that they propagated throughout their countries.
Correct. He said, he asked, was it a made up state for Zionism? That's what Brian asked. I mean, after World War I and the breakup of the Ottoman Empire, it went to the Brits, right? And it was called British Palestine. And, shortly, we know what happened, less than 50 years later. Yeah, we know what happened. They formed the nation state of Israel, and they started moving in Europeans and some Americans, over there. But most of them people, it's so funny. They said I saw a couple videos. Abby Martin's video is really good. Shout out to her and what they do at Empire Files. She had that video where they were just talking to average citizens like us, like, hey, how you feel about, the Arabs? Oh, we just got to crush them. There's nothing left. There's no peace. We just gotta get rid of them. Like the most violent, racist bastards that you've ever seen. Like, it has to be how it was here in, like Marcus said, like the late 1800s, early 1900s in regards to people that look like the three of us.
Yeah, sorry, I was reading Thomas's comment back to Brian. It says, yes, Israel once existed over 2,000 years ago, but their lands were conquered by many empires from the Middle East, Mediterranean, North Africa over the past 2,000 plus years. I mean, it's kind of funny. I've been hearing that talk in some of the black circles also with like the Kemet people. And those who don't know what I'm talking about, Kemet, they believe in Egyptology and tracing their roots back to Egypt. And so you have a group of the black community, so-called black community, which they believe that they come from Egypt, another group who believe that they come from Israel, which I would be in the latter. And that just doesn't come from just throwing stuff out there. That comes from doing a lot of diligent research on the tracking of Israelites, on different phenotypes, on a bunch of different things on the secular side, including going through the way the Bible says for you to figure out who suspected Israelites might be. And so if you do the reading, then it's pretty clear who it's talking about. And the reason why I believe it so much so is because I don't know how somebody could have predicted events that are so. For instance, I'll give you one example. It talks about John talks about they were given the ability to rain down fire. Talk about a nation given the ability to rain down fire upon another nation. How could somebody in the days of catapults and slingshots understand about a nation being able to launch basically missiles onto another nation? And that's just one thing. I mean, I could go through gazillions of things. I could go through understanding the different slave trades, the different nations which were involved, and how the Bible gives the biblical identities and names of all of those places, and they all correlate and line up to all of the people who were involved in those slave trades, from the transatlantic to the North African to the Silk Road slave trade. All of them are in there. Let's see what else to see. Oh, damn, that's a tough one. Kelly says, even though I have never denied Nazi atrocities, the fact that I support Palestine makes my dad call me a Holocaust denier. It's so frustrating how the propaganda has been so strong in this country that most people don't even realize how biased a lot of the information is. For instance, if you went to Russia, say in the 1960s, 1970s, the point of view you would have got from them is that it was mostly atrocities committed on Russian non-Jews, and that the Jewish population, that the atrocities were less so on them. I'm not saying either perspective is correct, but when you have one over here saying, no, it was mostly the Jewish, the Ashkenazis, and it was very little Russians who were affected. And then the other side is saying, no, it was mostly the Russians, very little Jewish. Then you have other sources which say it was an amalgam of a bunch of different people, not just Jewish, not just Russian, it was people, gypsies, it was all kind of people. There were a lot of people who came out of North Africa and other places. So there were melanated people also involved in the Holocaust. Their stories are never even mentioned. It's focused on either Russian, Polish, or Jewish. All of these other people, they don't even get mentioned, but they were massacred also. We never hear about the gypsies. We never hear about Africans who were over there, because a lot of people don't realize they had slave trades in all of those nations too, and slaves ended up everywhere. And so there are people who descended from slaves who grew up in those parts of Russia, Germany. I mean, I had a kid who lived right up the street from me who was a Black German kid. So we don't even look at a lot of these things in a whole what's that word, panoramic view of it. We look at it from a very isolated lens most of the time. And so a lot of our parents, they've grown up being force-fed a narrative, indoctrinated, exactly, that they don't even take into consideration what it was like in somebody else's shoes.
Kelly asked, what is the reason for these latest hostilities? You know, Kelly, I'm not even sure, to be honest. What I do know is that the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces or Security Forces, whatever they are, they went into the mosque at Al-Aqsa and they started throwing flashbangs or tear gas, one of the two, inside the mosque as the people were actively praying. So that kind of led to, like, you know, what's the word, like a whole bunch of people scrambling, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously you're going to fight back. So it looked as if some of the Palestinians started throwing rocks at the security forces and some were fighting them. So it went from there to what we see now. But I don't really know what the reason is. I just think it has to happen. I think they have a number that they have to hit every so often, right? It's like, you know, okay, on this day we can only kill 2. On this day we can only kill 5. But you know, this day every year we're allowed to kill 100. So I think this is just that that day of the year where they're able to get away with using more military might than usual.
Well, no, go ahead, Emmanuel, and then I'll break down what I know about it. I try to reach out to my buddy Franco, because him, I can't remember his guest he had on, but it was an excellent interview, and they really went in depth talking about this subject. And then also I have a couple of other layers that I can add on to it also. But Emmanuel, you wanted to say something? I'll let you say something, and then I'll lay out everything I know.
No, I just wanted to. I wanted I wanted to answer Kelly's question. What was the latest response for the hostility? Question. What is the reason for this? Hostilities. I guess I would have the question is why is it getting such a spotlight like right now, like in this particular moment? Because it's been going on for for friggin' time. So to see it get such acclaim now, I guess personally, I'm on, and maybe it's just me, maybe other people feel that way, but I'm always wondering what's going on while we're actively looking at what's going down with Israel and Palestine, because this has been going on for a while. I mean, journalists and all that have been writing stories about, just gonna call it a genocide for a while. Now everybody picks it up. What's going like? So now my question is, what's going on in the back? Like what being made in the background right now? And before I entered this program, I've been like, Palestine is, Palestinians, they're getting killed left and right. It's horrible. It's an atrocity. Just like what's moving? What crisis is going down? Who power plays are happening, because it's been happening for a while. So why does it get a spotlight? So that's all I really wanted to. I just wanted to reframe her question. That's it.
I'll lay out the narrative that most people don't think about. The one thing you have to think about when trying to figure out what somebody's doing is you got to think about that person and what they believe in and what their goals are overall. Now, we looked at the politics of Israel, from a minute to minute, from a moment to moment. Yeah, he does have all these indictments and all that stuff, but he's not worried about that too much, because he knows he has Gantz and that side support. He figured, if I'll go more extremist, then I'll have more support. And so he's thinking that he can wiggle his way out of there. And you got to remember how much favor that this man has behind the scenes. The reason why he's in so much heat now is because even the citizens in Israel are starting to look at him like, we don't really agree with what you're doing. The more anti-Bibi sentiment in Israel has really risen. So that's another, I want to enforce that what I was saying before, that everybody in Israel is not on the same page with what the Israeli government is doing. So that's why I want to separate and not try to put all the blame on every Israeli.
Marcus, real quick, let me just jump in real. With that being said, is it 100% of the Israelis who agree? No, but 99% of them are hardcore Zionists, right? The latest guy, Benny Gantz, or that was the guy before, I think Netanyahu lost to.
Well, he's a defense minister now.
Yeah.
So-called defense.
they're very much of the same ideology. It's just that Netanyahu is more crooked than they normally are, because his wife is caught up in the indictment, and so is his kid, one of his kids, or maybe two of them. But they're just a corrupt people, and I do think, to answer some of the people's questions in the comments about whether or not this latest round of violence is related to Netanyahu's legal issues and maybe an election there. Yeah, of course it is. I mean, he's telling people, look, I'll get rid of the problem. And if all of them feel like the Palestinians are the problem, and this dude is saying, like, I got the bug spray for these roaches, like, that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? So,
Well,
of
what
course,
what I'll say to add into that is, because that's where all the focus is going. That is a part of it, but that's a small part of it. Like, that's looking at the day-to-day goals. You got to remember, people like BB have long-term goals. And what is every Zionist ultimate goal? Think about it. That mosque. The mosque, which those very Muslims are praying on, which is their third holiest site, is also the site which the Israelis believe is the site of the third temple. That's where they believe the third temple needs to be built. And they believe that they need that land so they could build the temple for the return of the Messiah, which, the way I read the Bible, the Messiah, he brings the temple. It doesn't require you doing the work for your Messiah to come. Your Messiah is supposed to come and do that for you. So that's what I'm saying. The way they have their whole understanding of everything is completely ass backwards. They're trying to literally fulfill every prophecy through their own hands. And they want that piece of land. And if you look at what was going on the day before that, because why I say you got to look at what's going on. They've been setting this whole thing up. This is a long-term chess move. Now, what you had going on is, we already know that they've been doing the evictions and they've been moving settlers into people's houses and all that stuff like that. Well, what they decided to do is, a big court ruling just came out, and they were about to enforce a ton of these evictions. Now, they were going to do hundreds, I believe, possibly even thousands of evictions on a certain date, right before the end of Ramadan. So, on top of it, they already know there's tensions under the surface. They decide, we're going to inflame the people more. So they start protesting. At that time, that's when the whole situation with the mosque came, and they start shooting the tear gas in while they're in their praying. After that, you have more and more clashes between them, and you see the fires. And then that's when it goes to the video where it has all those young Israelis out in the street, cheering and dancing around and laughing and having a great time watching the mosque burn. Now, keep in mind what I said before. A lot of the Orthodox Zionists, they believe they need that land. That mosque goes away. Now that land is open. Next thing you know, court settlement comes out that, hey, because the land is vacant or something like that, now it becomes Israeli control automatically, setting the stage for them to be able to fulfill their own prophecies they believe. Now, go into what happens after that. With all of that going on, they're trying to fight back and hold on to this mosque. They know what's going on. They know they're trying to be forced out, and so they say, you know what? Now's the time. Let's just launch everything we got to hope that we can kind of slow this process. Israel says, yes, you guys play right into my hands. Now I can start bombing out all of your other major apartments, major news agencies, all of your major buildings. So it's easier to start going through and do the evictions later on through the rest of the Gaza Strip, because now it's not as hard to get rid of the apartment buildings. Because think about it, when they were doing these evictions, right after they pull everybody out, what do? They go in with a wrecking crew, tear down the whole building. Right now, they're able to do that same demolition at a lot faster pace by just flying over and blowing up buildings. Instead, now they're saying, oh, we'll give you a warning. You guys get an hour, get the fuck out of the building or die.
Yeah, it's too much.
Yeah,
way too much.
So we always got to keep in mind that this is not just functioning from a governmental state. This is functioning from an ideology also tied in with an ethno-religious state. And when you're forming your government off of what you believe in, I'm not even going against theocracies because I believe in a theocracy myself. But when they're run in the way this one is being run, with the corruption and the manipulations and the malice and just the lack of care and decency to other people, that's when it's a problem. And so all of these other nations have all been starting to say, I'm talking about in the Arab world or even Islamic world, I'll say, because that extends out to Turkey, which Turkey is a part of the European, as a part of the European Union and NATO. So we think about that situation, and now you're starting to have, what was it, Lebanon started sending attacks, Syria, and I tell you, it's only a matter of time before Iran starts sending something. And I know that Iron Dome is knocked down, say 90% of the missiles that have come in, but you got to remember, what Iran has is much, much more powerful, much, much more advanced than all of these other nations have. And so that Iron Dome, if they start launching and they advance their distance, because from what I've heard, what I've heard that roughly they're about a little bit over 1,000 miles away, something like that. And I believe their capability of their weapons right now, the ICBMs, is about 800 to 900 miles. So if they increase the fuel capacity or, whichever, are able to close the distance in some kind of way, getting closer to Israel, you could see much larger attacks and more than likely, more casualties. And, I'm not advocating, directly for casualties or any of that stuff, but I'm just trying to give people a warning on what I see, possibilities of things I see starting to warm up. I mean, we've been talking about it for months. I've been telling you guys, even before the election, what was coming. I've been seeing all of these tensions, and what everybody knows is Biden is a war hawk president, and he's going to surround himself with war hawks. And his only way to respond is he's going to flare up and do some things. And if you haven't paid attention, I've been doing videos talking about this here and there, doing interviews on other channels, that China is doing all their stuff with Taiwan right now. So you have the United States trying to focus on that. You have the United States trying to focus on Russia and Ukraine. You have the United States trying to deal with all the border issues that are going on the southern border. You have the United States also trying to worry about negotiations with North Korea. They're also trying to deal with the Iran nuclear deal with all of this shit going on in Israel right now. The United States, and they kind of took a flippant, arrogant response towards everybody and just been like, we support Israel, we'll worry about the rest of you guys, maybe. And it's kind of like the Western European sentiment as a whole, down to the micro level up to the macro level, if you think about it. If a white cop kills a minority, they have to have evidence on top of evidence and eyewitness and this and that and all of these things before they can even proceed with charges. But let the situation be flipped. It doesn't take much to throw most melanated people in prison or jail. Virtually nothing. It's the same kind of situation here. When Israel or the United States or Great Britain or any of these nations want to start doing war crimes, we have to prove within a shadow of a doubt, reasonable doubt, got to find this, got to have that, got to have video, got to have all of this evidence to even throw charges or accusations against Western nations. But every single other nation, whether it's not Israel, whether it's Palestine, whether it's Iran, whether it's North Korea, whether it's China, whether it's Cuba, whether it's Venezuela, whether any other nation, they can throw just a charge out there randomly and don't have to prove it. And we all as a nation have fell into this whole trance and indoctrination of white supremacy ourselves, and accepting that narrative that, yeah, if it's a non-melanated nation or people, they got to prove without a shadow of a doubt that they're innocent. And we can just throw a claim out there without proving anything. But if it's somebody from, you know, the Western society, you better have to prove every single thing without a shadow of a doubt. And we have to break out of that "that's okay" narrative that is that one-sided and that lopsided.
Or we have to, when it comes to this topic as well, we have to stop like accepting what they say when they say, oh, clashes between Israelis and Palestinians. No, clashes like if me, Marcus E, we decide to put our hands up. Yeah, then that's a clash. It's not a clash when Shaquille O'Neal comes over here and plays basketball against, you know, Muggsy Bogues. That's not a clash. You know what I'm saying? That's, you know, that's destruction. So even the way they frame it is always within the context of giving cover to Israel for whatever their behavior is at any given moment. Most times they don't even pay attention to what happens, because quite honestly, the media, you know, and you could tell, again, this is another example of how you could tell who runs our media, right? Because in the media, what do they often say? If it bleeds, it leads, right? So they'll show you any fantastical car accident, a shooting, they'll give you the warning, say, hey, this is graphic, etc., etc. With all the graphics that happens over there that we can see online, that we do see online, when it comes to putting it on TV, you never see it, ever. So, you know, it just goes to show who runs the media. But you can't say that, because then, you know, you're being anti-Semitic.
Well, here's something funny that we know out here in California, like, especially, I'm not too far from like the Burbank studios and all that stuff like that is, you know, definitely within driving range. And kind of for I'll say more leftist leaning, or I'll say more independent thinking people, what we all know out here in Hollywood is that, or I don't live in Hollywood, but close enough, whatever. I consider all this shit the same. What we all know is that the media is mostly bullshit. It's infotainment. That's what it is. They take stories and they frame them from the most entertaining way that they can come up with to get views. And if they find something that sticks, they'll keep replaying it and repackaging it. It's not very. It's not about trying to actually inform you of issues that are going on. Because if that was the case, you would put the story, whether it's a hot story or not. If it's a story about, hey, in this town in Kentucky, these kids all start this project and they figure out a new way of harnessing solar power. That should be a story that should go across all of the, you know, major networks. That way, if there's an investor out there that can help, you know, further this technology and help as a whole entire nation, those things can be shared and we can help as a whole human species. But that's not what's focused on. I mean, I think about the one that sticks out in my head the most because it was just so obnoxious how much it was on. I think back to CNN when Anna Nicole Smith died. They played that shit for like 6 weeks straight, all day long, talking about this one woman. And I'm like, do y'all realize how much other shit is going on in the world? And all you're doing is talking about this bleach blonde bimbo who was a B-rate actress who just showed her tits a whole lot. And she married a rich billionaire. And that's what we should give a fuck about? I mean, come on, people. I'm sorry. I went on tangent.
Shots fired.
No, but he's right. You have been here since. What did Marcus call it? Marcus always called it pro wrestling. That's all entertainment is. Wrestling. There's a heel, there's a hero, right? It's narrative. It's controlling the narrative. Keep you entertained. Keep watching. That's all it is. And I'll never.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. It reminded me of a quote that I did not want to forget. You go back to the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, you want to know why they had the Colosseum and all this shit like that? The reason why they had it is because they figured out if we keep the people entertained with bread and circus, they won't pay attention to political matters that are going on. And so what if they're getting ripped off in their taxes from the kingdom? So what if, they're getting overtaxed on their salt or whatever? Just, hey, the games are coming. So just focus on the game, numb your mind out. It's the same thing today. And like when I go back to my foundation, the Bible, it says, there is no new thing on the earth. Nothing is new. I can literally show you stripper poles in the Bible. So there's nothing new, because all of these people, what they've done is just taken stuff from the Bible, the good and the bad and the ugly, and repackaged it in a modern light. That's all has happened. And so the same thing with, hey, that's the reason why with the whole COVID stuff was going on. They were in a rush to keep all the sports going. Got to keep the entertainment going. Let's figure out, people can't go to movies. How are we going to get movies out? We can put them on Hulu and we can do this special deal with HBO. They got to keep you occupied. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a release and a relax and have interests, but they want you so focused on every damn thing else that you do not pay attention to what they are doing.
Oh, and also they want you so brainwashed so that whenever your friend, your family member, or a teacher and somebody says, hey, all that stuff that you've been taught, it's really bull. This is the real. And then they will just reject it because it didn't come from the TV source.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly said, I'm not entertained by this latest conflict. Even Hollywood can't dress up genocide. Correct. And that's the only reason why I think we're seeing some kind of critical reporting on Israel's side of this issue. So it's very a minimal amount of criticism being, levied towards Israel. What happened, Marcus? What you doing? Reading?
Oh, no. Yeah, I was reading this comment that Sign said, Marcus, the games are much needed distraction from Rome on HBO. Yep. Oh yeah, and I noticed up there, Gamer for Life told me I'm very smart. So thank you for the compliment. I just try my best to scour as much information, sacrifice my body and my time and my personal life to get that information out there so you all can still relax, watch Game of Thrones for the new one that's coming up or whatever other shows that are going on, but still be informed and abreast of the situations that are going on, because that's their goal. I mean, you go back to, I feel like this is a time in American history where they were about to lose control and they figured out, oh shit, we need more bread and circus. We got to distract these people. We really got to distract these people. So what you had, think about back to the 60s. You had the civil rights era popping up. You had the protest against the governments with Vietnam. You had protests, which a lot of people miss, still protests of Korea. Some of the experiments with Agent Orange that was going on. You had the people who were protesting the testing of MK Ultra on people. And those who hear about that and get into all this conspiracy theory stuff, that's a whole nother topic that we can get into if you'd like to. But the fact that they were actually bringing in people and testing them with LSD is a documented fact that our government did that. And the program was called MK Ultra. Now, you can decide on your own if you feel like it worked or not. But the fact that they were testing people, that's a fact. You have that going on. You had the women's liberations movements that were start going on, and the bigger rise of feminism. You had more, believe it or not, on the West Coast, you had more Latin Americans who were trying to fight for more rights because of how the working conditions were going on out here and all the protests. You had all of these things going on, all of these different groups of people saying that, hey, something is wrong with this society and it needs to change. What do you have? The pickup in the war, get everybody focused on war. Next thing you know, they start promoting the biggest fights. You have what, Thrilla in Manila. You start having a lot of other events that start taking your eyes off of it. I believe right after that period, they start going into the Olympics, and that's when you start noticing more of a push for sports on TV. I mean, go back to the early '60s, how football was in the AFL days.
Marcus, can I ask you a question?
They cut the Super Bowl for like Little House on the Prairie or something. Now, and think about it, in modern day, they would never cut a major sporting events championship game for some random rerun of a Disney movie.
Of a network show, yeah.
Yeah.
But Marcus, would that be the reason why during the Olympics, like the Black Power Fist type move, all of them had like got like raked through the cold gauge, and the dude who gave him the gloves, who did literally all of them who were iconic got subsequently jammed because they focused on they diverted the attention from the bread and circus. They focused on like real issues. So I didn't know why. Ironically, didn't know like a couple of so.
Well, see, what happens with those situations is every now and then, some very passionate and creative, figure or inspirational leader will pop up, and they will figure a way to kind of unconventionally go around all the safeguards which the elites have kind of put in place, just like that whole, the black power fist in the glove. They never would have figured that something like that could spark such a reaction. And so what they have to do is, okay, it's out of the bag, but how do we control this? How do we get control of the situation? They did the same thing with that. They did the same thing with Martin Luther King. They did the same thing with Malcolm X. They do the same thing with all of those black activists who become politicians. They find a way to dull that blade all the way down to it's a butter knife. And then they do the same thing all the way up until today with Black Lives Matter. Once it rose to a certain level, they said, whoa, we got to co-opt this shit and control it. And then they shut it back down and turn it into tokenism, what they always do. And they are master experts at finding a way of taking this passionate cause and dissipating it. You look at what happened.
And infiltrating and putting it out.
With Bernie Sanders, too. I mean, what his campaign was trying to do. Any campaign which is trying to actually strike at real issues. Now, granted, I have my own issues with Bernie Sanders on multiple levels. But what I'm saying he was trying to do, even the little bit of change that it would have done and how much it could have helped on a small level, they don't even want to give that iota of an inch. Because once people get a little bit of good, then they say, you know what? I deserve more than this. You get out of that mindset which your parents and grandparents told you, say, well, just be happy you have a job. It gets you out of that mindset saying, instead of just saying, I'm happy I have a job, why don't I have this job? Why don't I shoot for these jobs? And it starts to suppress your hope. So that's what they try to do, moderate the hope. So they don't need a bunch of entrepreneurs out here who want to come up with their own ideas and companies and own corporations. They need workers. And that's what they try to mold every single one of us into, just like the Matrix talked about in the movie. They're turning everybody into a battery. That's what the machines were doing. That's what we are. We are that battery that keeps the engines of their corporations running, that keeps them fat on wealth, that has them having 4 or 5 giant houses that are larger than some small countries. That's their purpose. Always keeping, every time one of us start to wander closer to the truth or start wandering out of that line, they got to get those shit back in there. And some of us have decided that we're not going to be kids.
And if they can't herd you out, then they just ostracize you or let you stay there, and then just make that nod like, oh, so and so, oh, they're crazy. You already know how they are.
Paint them as dicks or lunatics, or they don't know what they're talking about. They're misinformed or ill-informed or antipathetic or self-hating or any of the other litany of things they do to derail you trying to find the truth. You seeking answers, questioning the narrative, because if you don't believe the narrative controls you. You can't control what you're thinking.
I was going to say something that a lot of people haven't noticed either, that they've been kind of throwing in there when they talk about going after these conspiracy theorists and all that. What I've been hearing more and more slipped in there, which, because a lot of, especially on the left, politically, a lot of the people on the left come from an atheist or evolutionary point of view, or agnostic even at best. And so people like me are kind of a unique animal who is a religious zealot. So they are pushing against people like that, because what they understand is people who can follow what's going on in the Bible understand what's going on with the elites, because the elites based most of their plans and schemes off of stuff in the Bible, trying to fulfill biblical prophecy. Whether you all believe in it or not, they do. And that's what I'm saying. When you have an opponent who believes in something, who is trying to go towards certain goals, the only way you can understand what they're trying to do next is to understand what they believe in. And the reason why these elites believe in a lot of these things is because there's unexplainable things in there which they still can't even understand. For instance, it literally names off world figures on tablets that go back to hundreds, if not thousands of years before certain people are even born, naming them actually by name and saying the deeds that they're going to do, when they rise to power, how long their rise is going to be and how they're going to die. If you give me a book that can tell me that this person is going to rule Greece 500 years from now, they're going to rule for 12 years, they're going to conquer most of the known world, they're going to die at 33, then it's going to split apart, and their 4 generals are going to take over ruling all those areas. And then when they lose power, they're going to merge into the Greco-Roman Empire, and then they're going to have a stint. Any book that can tell me all of that shit hundreds of years before it happens, you have to show me how these people are either psychics or how they are intentionally engineering all of human history to match up with supposedly fabricated tiles. That's what you have to show me for me to just kind of disperse with the notions I have.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly had mentioned, Brian had mentioned, like, what do we think about 9/11? I mean, we're coming up on 10 years this year. Bullshit. There's no other way to put it.
Oh, something I want to say, because I don't know if you guys have been on the Discord yet. And for those in the chat that don't know, if you're on Discord, hop on and find my server. I welcome you all in for, some of these deeper conversations. But Brian put on there about the dancing Israelis. I don't know, are any of you guys familiar with the dancing Israelis?
With the who?
The dancing Israelis.
Oh yeah, on the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you had the Israelis in Manhattan basically watching, I don't want to say their work, but they were watching their work. They was watching the buildings come down, and they were on the roof, and they was dancing, celebrating, because they knew what the response was going to be. I mean, come on. And then Trump knew that, and then when he was running, you know, his dumb ass tried to say, "Oh, those are Arabs." Like, okay.
Well, there were so
Gamer,
many
have a good one,
stories. There were so many stories in Fox News. They aired a segment that asked a lot of uncomfortable questions. That segment got yanked down. Now I still have that video, but they found thousands of dollars in cash. Granted, anybody can say, "Oh, well, of course, if you found some Israelis, they're going to be IDF members," you know, because everybody has to do voluntary service. But I believe it was 3 out of 5 of them were intelligence. The fact that you have 3 out of 5 that you can tie to an intelligence agency, and then they said, "Oh no, we were just over here as carpet cleaners or movers," is what they said, and we heard it happening, so we rushed up to take videos. I think they took like 70 something pictures. Some of the pictures of them like holding a lighter, you know, with the towers in the background, you know, them all smoking cigarettes, them all high-fiving, you know, having a good time, you know, laughing and joking about it.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Gamer. Appreciate you.
Yeah. And so, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta get my comments up. And so, the political matrix, have you have a good Sunday? Do take care. Oh yeah,
Kelly, I saw your comment, Kelly. You're funny.
Kelly is always a hot mess.
Hilarious.
Kelly, have a good one.
Hilarious.
We'll catch you again next time, brother. I did not know that. Brian says, did you know that that guy named Alan Dershowitz was their lawyer? For those who don't know, Alan Dershowitz is definitely tied heavily to the Clintons. That's why I said when you start getting into this tangled web, it just becomes too coincidental. Think about it. Alan Dershowitz was also tied up with Epstein. Epstein is known to be tied up with Ghislaine Maxwell, who is the daughter of a Mossad agent. I mean, you can't write this shit out. I mean, this literally sounds like a damn Tom Clancy novel that we're living in. And if you want to take the narrative, you can. That's fine and dandy. But just look at it and use common sense, people. Come on, it's not hard to figure out what the hell's going on. It is not hard. And the reason why they're trying to stomp out some of these things because they start telling on people. For instance, most Christians don't even realize that they're getting propaganda from the same people who literally stole the Bible. And now these same people are telling them that we have to stay with Israel no matter what. The reason why they're doing that is that helps their Zionism propaganda. That's and if you don't realize that the source that you're basing your faith on is lying to you, and that maybe your understanding is completely ass fucking backwards, then you don't know what the hell is going on. What Kelly said?
When's it ever stopped Kelly before?
I know she would. And I noticed Mona is everywhere, so no telling what Mona is up to right now. I mean, lately I've been just popping into people's live stream and kind of talking a little trash with the people in the chats, you know. And almost every page I go to that I follow that's in the political lens that we all kind of focus in, Mona is right there. And I'm like, does this woman sleep ever? I mean, I think Mona might be a little bionic.
Kelly said Dershowitz is arguing against age consent laws. He's an ancient pervert. Yeah, I mean, he just fits the mold of like every dirtbag lawyer you could think of. He is just him. It's just him. He'll defend anybody. I mean, he was out there. Was he defending Trump for a little bit on something? Yeah. So, you know, Dershowitz is one of those people who are placed in certain places because, you know, he has a bit of credibility amongst the viewing public, you know. And that's half the problem. You got to turn the TV off for a lot of these people.
Did you know that
they believe it?
I was going to tell you, did you know that even in the Bible, it even talks about the lawyers in a shitty way. Even in the
I'm sure.
Bible, it calls them like crooks and crooked and all that shit. And I'm talking about this is 2,000 years ago. They were being called crooked and all that shit. It's funny how something Kelly said, where she said ancient pervert. That's funny
Yeah.
that she would say that, because
It was.
ironically, you know who the biggest perverts were in history? The ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. Well, I won't say it kind of careful when I say ancient, because there are ancient people and there are ancient before those people that we think of. But the people we think of as Greeks and the Romans, some of their practices, like for instance, it's ironic that in school we go to gym class or the gymnasium. You go back to ancient Greece, what a gymnasium actually was. A gymnasium was a building for men only to work out in the nude together. And it was commonly known that a lot of homosexuality and pedophilia with young boys went on in those organizations. So it goes back deep with a lot of these people at the top levels. They've been doing this same kind of sick, perverted shit for a long time. And if you know, Alan Dershowitz was tied to Epstein, and it said that he went out there to Epstein's place, and it was known that he had underage women and boys there, from what I've heard. Do the math. Oh yeah, I noticed. What about the rumblings between Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein? Just know that Melinda Gates didn't suicide herself. She's not going nowhere. They're not going to do it. She's not going to say anything.
I find it funny though that they announced their separation, and then immediately the stories I started to see were pretty negative towards Bill.
That's her lawyer. That's just her lawyer leaking that shit so that when court case come up, she can get what she wants.
But there's not a court case because they have a separation contract, so there won't be a formal court case where they're arguing. They already decided how they were going to split their shit up. But I did find it funny that all the media coming out was like anti-Bill, and it was focused on Epstein and his relationship with Epstein to a certain extent. But you notice they never, ever, ever want to say why. They will go into pedophilia before they will go into the transhumanist agenda that they have, and the pharmaceuticals and the scientific shit that they were all highly invested in. That's a part of the Epstein story that people tend to not focus on. Epstein was very much into the science, very much into scientists, very much into transhumanism. He wanted to start the world over with his seed. That's how these people are. I'm sorry, and bro, your third leg probably ain't that worse. Like, you can't stand on it, kid. There you go, Kelly. I threw one in there for you.
The irony, as we're talking about the Greeks and the Romans, you go back to the Greeks and Romans, and all of them thought they were like gods. And so, I'm talking about mostly the emperors, of course, but a lot of the wealthy people in court also, and the senators thought the same way. And so they promoted themselves as gods. So to think of the great grandchildren of these people still thinking of themselves like gods, I guess it makes sense,
Absolutely. But there's nothing coming out against like Melinda. Like, here's the thing. They're like, oh, she was concerned about his relationship with Epstein as far back as 2019. Like, he was meeting with this dude like 2015. He was meeting with him in like 2011 or 12, one of them, something like that. So maybe it was 13. Who knows for sure? But they had a relationship that went way back. And Bill Gates's guy, I think, was the executor of the estate for Epstein. So don't tell me that you just took a chance meeting and you didn't know he was going to be there, and you got on his plane and you didn't know. You're a pretty smart guy. How is it you don't know this about this particular guy? But birds of a feather gonna flock together.
Oh, wow. Chris, this one's for you.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. If anybody would just check in to see exactly what the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has been doing in those two countries specifically, or not countries, well, one is a continent, but you get what I mean. If you just check in to see what they were doing in India and Africa and the results and what was happening mainly to the girls, they were becoming sterile. A lot of them. Yeah, you had some deaths, of course, but it seems to me the overarching goal of this thing is to sterilize people one way or the other. And of course, it was
Well,
done through
well,
vaccinations.
okay, tell them about tell them about your boy who's at the CDC now, who got his little comfy position involving formerly working with Bill Gates.
Which one is this? Oh, Fauci?
No, not Fauci. Was it Dr. Theodora or something like
Oh,
that?
Tedros Ghebreyesus or Ghebreyesus, I can never say his name. Like
Mhm.
that was the guy working in Ethiopia. And he was part of the government. Obviously, there were trials undergoing there were vaccination trials happening in Ethiopia for maybe it was Ebola, I believe. But they were doing that. People were becoming very sick, and Tedros, the guy who used to run the CDC, or is it the World Health he's at? He's at the World Health Organization,
Right.
matter of fact. So he helped cover up he helped cover up all the foul shit that was happening as a result of the vaccination trial program that was there. So as a result of him helping to cover that up, he was given a position at the World Health Organization, and he's not even a doctor. He's not a scientist. He's not any of that.
Just a bureaucrat. It says, panel, do Zionists only have 12 years to come up with a second coming? That I don't know because their understanding of a second coming does not fit anything which I understand from the Bible. For one, it says that the children of Israel will be brought out of the land of the north to be put into their land.
I know,
Now,
Emmanuel.
if
I
you're
know.
already in the land, I don't know how the children of the north and south, I don't know how the northern and southern kingdom can be brought out of the land of the north to Israel if you're already in Israel. It also talks about that in those when they're put back into the land, that Gog and Magog will come against them to fight them, and there will be no walls on the gates. So the fact that they have walls, gates, and an iron dome is a little perplexing to me. There's many other things also. This is actual scripture, so whoever is listening and want to try to come at us for some kind of whatever you guys want to do, copyright strike, I mean strikes or whatever. The Bible literally in Jeremiah says, "A bastard will dwell in Ashdod, and the pride of the Philistines will be cut off." Now, Philistine is another name for Palestine. Now, Bible says a bastard would dwell there. What is a bastard in the Bible? Somebody who is not the child of God. That's what that says. And then I could even go into Revelations 2 and 9, Revelations 3 and 9. But those, I just say, look those up. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look those couple of scriptures up. So the whole 12 years coming up, I don't know what the hell kind of madness that they believe in that fits their prophecies. Last I heard, they believe that the Messiah is going to be some average, humble man who is going to reunite the people and just bring some kind of unity around the world through his speeches or some kind of bullshit. I don't know. What I read in the Bible is it talks about the Son of Man coming through the sky with a host of angels and then taking up his people and then putting them back in the land. So I don't know what kind of madness that they believe in. So the 12 years, who knows? What are your thoughts, Chris and Emmanuel, on that 12 years thing?
Yeah, I don't know. Where I grew up in Queens, there was a cemetery near my grandmother's house. And, most of the Jewish people would try to buy out most of the people in the neighborhood because they believed the second coming was going to happen there in Queens at this cemetery. So when they tell me it's 12 years, I'm like, I don't. So no, I don't think we have just 12 years left.
I'm with Chris. I don't think we have to wait 12 years. 12 years, given how given what's going on right now. I wouldn't give it 12 years. I'd give it a lot lower than that. So I've never actually even heard of the second coming personally. So lucky.
Oh, you say you've never heard of it?
Nope, I've never heard of it.
Through Judaism or Christianity?
I'm still telling you.
Wow. Well, I guess I can go into a little bit of both. What I've heard, there's multiple different beliefs throughout Judaism, because some of them they only believe in the Torah. That's the first 5 books of the Bible. Some of them believe the Torah and Tanakh, which is the first 5 books of the Bible and some of the books of the prophets. Then they don't believe in the New Testament, so they don't believe in a Messiah coming per se. Many don't. But now in Christianity, they do believe in the New Testament. In the New Testament, it does talk about a return of the Messiah. When Christ, I'll say it through the colloquial terms, that's what most people know it by. Christ, after he died, he is waiting in heaven. The first time he came as a lamb, the next time he's going to come as a lion. And so he's coming back to redeem the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And when he does that, every nation who has come against the Israelites will be punished. And so it all depends on what was the accountability of what your nation did and the level of what they did. Because what is it? It is Psalms 83. Actually, you know what, Chris? Can you pull this up? Pull up Psalms 83 for me.
See, I've heard something like that, but I guess it wasn't phrased that way. I guess it wasn't phrased. So
remember before how I was saying that the other nations got all involved to cut Israel off from being an actual nation. Because see, what Christians come with is that, it's all this, you're a spiritual Israelite, and that's complete just nonsense. The whole book goes through genealogy over and over and over. It's not going through all this damn genealogy for no damn reason. It's telling you genealogy for a specific reason. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Can you read? Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. I guess I can go on ahead and read Psalms 83. It says, "Keep not thou silence." Go back down. Back up. I missed the first one. Keep not thou silence. Oh, I need the first one. Yeah, it says, there we go. Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up thy head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. When it's talking about the hidden ones, it's saying at that time the Israelites were hidden away. Nobody knew who they were or where they were really. But some people did know who they were and where they were. They have said, "Come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent." So all of these nations I'm about to mention all came together with one consent. It says they are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom. Edom is a whole entire nation. The Ishmaelites, Moab. The Hagarenes, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek. And Amalek is also another part of Edom, their family. The Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher also is joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot and Selah. And the children of Lot are all of the other descendants, which come from Moab and Ammon. It says, do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Caesarea, as Jabin at the brook of the Kison. And what that means is, you go back to what happened to the Midianites in history. The Midianites got obliterated, like people getting beheaded and all kind of stuff. That's what he's praying for here in the actual Bible. One of the prophets of God is praying. So when Christians tell you all that, oh, he wants us to love everybody, this is an Israelite prophet here telling you, I want my enemies murdered. That's what he's praying to God for. So this whole, oh, well, God loves everybody. No, he has some enemies. And that's what Christianity does not tell you, because some of these enemies are the Romans and the descendants of the Romans. I guess, yeah, I'll leave it at that on that. I'll go in depth on that on another. That's good, Chris. I'll go in depth on that on my other channel, because that's a very, very, very important understanding what that scripture means. Because when you understand who these different nations are, you understand who did what, and you will be able to actually track it to history. And you're able to say, oh, wait a minute, in the Silk Road slave trades, in the North Arab slave trades, and these slave trades, these things all happen. And so when you're able to match these events, you realize that all these people, they have a judgment that's coming also. So I'll leave it there. I know that this show is not my religious show, so I won't go into too deep. Let's see. Thomas says, at Signs, I heard some conspiracy theories about the Clinton Foundation. It said they create child sex rings for poor communities. They give welfare to around the world. Let's just say for that one, we cannot confirm nor deny. I don't want to give us too much in a sling, going on that one. But anything that these elites do, there is not a single thing that the elites do that I do not rule out as possible.
Well,
now,
we do know when they went to Haiti that the the friend of Clinton, who was supposedly running this organization to help kids, Laura Silsby, they got caught kidnapping kids. And I think it was almost like 40-something kids. And I think it was almost 40-some-odd kids that they had got busted with. I mean, there's more to that story, but just to give that one little piece, yeah, Thomas, they are doing that. It is what it is. You don't go to help people and then get caught kidnapping them. You know what I'm saying? You just don't.
Yeah, that's what you were talking about.
I mean, if you say that P word, then that gets you, that gets you in trouble. So you gotta be careful saying that P word.
Kelly says, I love the word low, of course.
Saw that. I was wondering what she meant by that.
Don't ask. Do not egg her on. Let's see. Yes, they do. The Mormons think the ancient Mississippian cultures, aka the mound builders, my ancestors, were the ancient home of white Hebrews, where Jesus made a return to earth. The Mormons do believe some whacked out shit. I'm not saying that they're entirely wrong, but the white Hebrews, I don't know about that terminology. I mean, there is plenty of archaeology to suggest that the northern tribes of Israel, the 10 northern tribes that they did come here to America. There's plenty of evidence that I believe that shows that, and I'm going to go into that on my other show. But I believe that. I believe the Mormons on that aspect, they're correct. But about the whole, what they believe about the white skin and the curse of Ham and Christ, and then everybody's going to turn white and all that shit, it's bugged out. It's complete nonsense. Buying into that. But do I believe that Latinos and Native Americans are Israelites? Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm. Well, Marcus, we had like 145.
Okay, let's see. I saw one. I think that's Mormons are fringe cult Zionists. Yes, Mormons are tied in with them also.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Well, I guess we've talked about a whole bunch of issues. Fine. If you guys have any other, topics or whatever you guys want us to go into, you guys know our Twitter handles, and oh yeah, you can also hit me up on Facebook too, even though I'm not on it nearly as much, and Instagram. But yeah, hit us up with any more of these questions. I will be trying to get on the Discord server more often, so that way we can have these conversations completely unfiltered, and I could not give you guys cryptic answers as often. So, yeah, fellas, you guys have anything to say before we get out of here and close it out for the night?
No, just as usual, be safe, take your vitamins, don't wear your face diapers too long. You're meant to exhale the air, not to keep breathing it back. So
It's probably why most of these people act so damn crazy. Been breathing too much carbon monoxide.
and drinking too much damn fluoride.
Yeah, that too.
What was I gonna say? CDC. Please pay attention to the recent bailout. What else? I had one more thing. I just blanked out. I can't remember. But just being spermed. Listen. That's what I do. So.
Oh yeah, and I was gonna put one more plug to one of my videos out there. The Mystery Babylon that I did on the Hebrew apologetics page. Make sure to check that out. A part 2 is coming up to that, and a couple other videos. It's possible that I might do a live tomorrow. I know I say that, but I might actually do one. I don't have a topic in mind. I'm just going to spew on all the different shit that what I've been thinking. So with that said, you all have a great weekend. Good luck. I hope you win on that lottery ticket signs. And
Yeah, lottery signs, man.
And if you get it, just